Okay, who's on? Ruvain? Is that you, Harvey? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
What's that? No, but I want to know that.
You think it's in there? You're gonna go through all of those?
No, those I can't. That's what I'm going there. That's true. Not everybody is as strict.
I can't open it.
That, well, because it's so kosher.
I'll buy that.
All right.
I'll use
Okay.
my fingers.
I don't mind. Your fingers are just as kosher as those.
Another one. Do I make a shuffle one more?
No.
No.
So,
Still Mizzou. Okay, I'm gonna start the sponsors and then we'll get rolling there.
it's
Okay.
not a whole thing. It's a
Right. It's a derivative. So it's Mizzou. What?
That's why we're eating it today.
Year of learning by Sue and Arnie Gerlich in memory of Malcolm Perlman and Philip Mann and Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Rivka Pearl Rosner bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, and in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Sharon and Frederiska, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman Elbas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon and Martha Gitler, Sharna Bat Yeshaya. Children,
They're gonna
grandchildren.
play at 7 in the clubhouse.
Saratoga,
Meaning here at 6.
Yosef, Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata Bat Asher. Friends of Nina Moinescu, Nechama Asna Bat Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of
Jack, Billy is the one.
Zek and Nishmat Simcha Melech ben Meir Leib Halevi.
I can't, it's too early.
He's up.
A month of learning by Karen and Mal Haller in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bat Yehuda Leib. B. Pizer in memory of her husband, Rav Yisrael Chaim ben David. Tova and Leo Zimmer in memory of her mother, Henya Bat Rav Beryl, and her father, Aaron ben Yosef Mordechai. And Perry and Jill Meltzer in memory of his mother, Malka Bat Baruch, and his sister, Goldalea Bat David Halevi. Stanley Presser in memory of his mother-in-law, Golda Bat Leber, his mother, Leah Bat Yehuda, his wife, Ruchel Mincha Bas Moshe. Carol and Josh Sanborn in memory of her father, Yehoshua Shia ben Moshe Yehuda Cohen. David and Sharon Carpel in memory of his Moshe ben Shlomo Yaakov. Have a week of learning by Barbara Gallendauer in memory of her husband, Avram ben Yonatan. Sylvia Gutis in memory of her mother.
Harvey.
I am.
Yeah. I wonder if you could do me a favor.
In memory of Sam's parents.
Is it possible you can get a minion for 6:15 tonight? And because I don't think I'll be back from the airport in time to get some.
Also, today is the 17th.
Yeah, Leonard's father.
There is no day of learning for today. And therefore, Misham is having a Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti, Shir Shema Talia.
I know. Well, obviously, you know, if you can't, you can. I only need it for Myra, really. So, right, because I don't want to make it too late.
All right,
I don't want to screw up
gentlemen, we're going to get underway. Harvey, anybody else on?
What? I'm sorry.
But the one you put back.
No.
What if we leave it there? It's gonna.
Okay,
All right, well,
all right. Whatever you want, doesn't matter to me. I can go to either one. I appreciate it.
Okay.
That sounds good. Okay.
All right, I am starting on the bottom of Daled, last line, Daled Amud Beis.
Okay.
No?
Do it.
Okay, we start from a new quote from the Mishnah. All right. I'm glad to hear everything went well yesterday.
Yes.
And yet, Mazel Tov and Yeshikoach, everyone, for finishing Gemara Megillah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I was participating in a family birthday party. Umataknin et kilkulei hamayim shebarishut harabim. Okay, and we repair, and I'm going to suggest it's the broken cisterns, according to one translation, okay, that are in the public domain. Okay.
Any part of the water
Okay.
system.
Okay, that's what I would have said, but one translation.
No, that's how it's translated, but it means any part of.
Right. Yeah. The plumbing,
Of the
right.
communal,
Okay,
water
so let's see what happens. What does it mean by repair? Okay, that's our question. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows: Chatita, in regards to cleaning, and chafiralo, cleaning it, yes. Digging brand new ones, no. Okay, Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Lo shanu ela she'ein rabim tzrichin lahem. Okay, this was only taught when the situation where the majority of people needed them. Aval rabim tzrichin lahem, afilu chafira muta. But even if the majority have need of them, okay, it seems he's saying that even digging new cisterns, water pipes, etc., okay, would be permitted.
because people are available to do it.
Okay, well, that might be one shot.
Because the majority makes it.
Okay, more seems to me to be because of the need of the community.
Sure. Yeah, the reason it's deferred to Chol Hamoed.
Well, we'll see. V'chi rabim tzrichin lahem mishari, and because, so that's why I'm saying, if we say the need is only for community need, then the following piece from the Gemara as a question makes sense. Do you say simply because of community need that it's permitted? Vahatanya. But aren't we taught elsewhere in a Braita? Chotatim, borot, that we can dig new cisterns, borot, shichin and ditches. Okay, all right. Chotatim, I'm sorry, right. Chotatim, we can clean cisterns and ditches, uma'arot, and caves, shel yachid, of an individual, ve'ein tzarich lomar shel rabim, and we certainly don't have to say to do it for the community. Ve'ein chofrin barot shichin uma'arot, but we don't dig, okay, cisterns, ditches, and caves, shel rabim. Ve'ein sarich lomar shel yachid, and we certainly don't have to say that it applies to individual. My love, is it not b'shirabim tzrichin lehem? Is it not because the community, the majority needs them? Lo, no, says the Gemara, b'she'ein rabim tzrichin lehem. It's not that the community needs of them. Dekavta gabe yachid, that in regarding the attitude for an individual, she'ein yachid tzarich lehem, that the individual doesn't need them. Chatita mishari, in that case, is the cleaning even permitted? Vahatanya, but here we're taught in a Braita, borot, that the cisterns, v'shichin, and again we say the ditches, uma'arot, and caves, shel yachid, of an individual. Okay, what do we do? Konsin mayim litochan, aval lo chotatin, that we may gather water to put into these items, but we do not clean them. Velo shafin, nor do we et kehen, nor do we plaster their cracks. Shel rabim chotatinotan, but belonging to the community, the majority, okay, we clean them. V'shafin et madkehen, and we plaster their cracks. Ve'elamai, so what are we saying here then? Okay, b'sheyachid tzarich lahem. Is this when an individual needs them? The kavta gabe rabim. This is according to we're saying in terms of the majority. B'sherabim tzrichin lahem chafira mi asir. And when the majority have need of them, do we say then that digging is prohibited? Vahatanya. But aren't we taught again in a Braita? Borot shichin ume'orot, the cisterns and the ditches and the caves, shall yachid of an individual. Konsin mayim l'tochan. We may gather water to add into them. V'chotatinotan. And in this Braita, it says, we do clean them. Aval lo shafin et tzidkehen. But we don't plaster their cracks. V'lo chotatin l'tochan. Okay, and we don't, right? Well, we'll get to that in a second. V'lo chotatin l'tochan, and we don't clean inside of them. V'lo sadinotan b'sid, and we don't lime them with lime, right? Which allows the water to flow more smoothly, right?
Or avoids leaks.
Right. V'shel rabim, but if it belongs to the community, to the public, chofrinotan, we dig them. V'sadinotan b'sid, and we lime them with lime. Elakasha hach kamaita. But then we have a problem with this earlier Braita. All right, Taritz hachi, and we can perhaps explain it in the following manner. Chotatin borot shel yachid. We can clean the ditches, or let's say the cisterns of an individual. Okay, b'sheyachid tzarich lehem, when the individual has need of them. Ve'ein tzarich lomar b'shel rabim kasher rabim tzrichin lehem. And we certainly can say that that's necessary for the majority, when the public has need of them. Da'afilu chafira mutar, that in that case, even digging new ones is permitted. So we go on. Ve'ein chofrin borot shichin u'ma'arot, but we don't dig cisterns, ditches, and caves. Shel rabim, of the majority, b'she'ein rabin tzrichin lehem, when the majority does not have a need of it. Ve'ein tzarich lomar shel yachid, and we don't even have to say regarding an individual. V'che'ein yachid tzarich lehem, because when an individual doesn't have need of them, afilu chatita nami asur, then even the cleaning is going to be prohibited. Now, okay, so we've had two Braitas in which there seemed to be a problem between the two, and we've now attempted to explain, okay, by using somewhat different language, that there is not necessarily a real problem between the two. Now, Rav Ashi is going to comment. Rama Rav Ashi, matnitin nami daika. According to Rav Ashi, our Mishnah also is exact in the way it's phrasing it, right? The Katani. Why? Because it teaches Osin kol tzorchei rabim, that we do all of the needs of the majority of the public. Okay, so the Gemara continues. Kol la'atuye, the word kol, when it says all, la'atuye mai, to include what? Lav la'atuye chafira, does not this seem to imply to include digging new right? Lo, no, says the Gemara, la'atuye hadatanya, to include that which it teaches, namely the following: Yotzein lekavetz et hadrachim. We go out to clear thorns from the roadways. All right, uletakein et harechovot, and to improve, to correct the roads. So we have, let's say, removing thorns from the streets. Let's put it that way for the moment, to improve the roads, and ve'et istartaot, and the highways.
The plazas, the market plaza.
Okay, you have a different translation than I had there. Okay. V'limod et hamikvaot, and what else? To measure the mikvaot, v'kol mikvah she'ein bo arba'in se'ah, and any mikvah that doesn't have 40 se'ah, margilin letocho arba'in se'ah. What do we do then? We direct a stream of water to go over the ground in order to go ahead and fill that mikvah. Okay? So that it will have its minimum requirement of measure, 40 se'ah. Okay? Uminayin she'im lo yatsu. And what happens if they did not go out? Va'asu kol ela, and do all these things. Shekol damim shenishpachu sham ma'ale aleihem hakatuv ke'ilu hem shifachum. And if they didn't go out and do all of those, let's say, public works projects, all right, properly, okay, the results would be considered. Does that mean that any blood shed as a result of accidents due to those situations, that they are then applied to, I'm going to use that word, applied to the people who had the responsibility, that they should have done them? Talmud Loma, therefore our text tells us, Vaya alecha damim, upon you will be the bloods, in the plural.
Some of them, of course, say this is specifically referring to the mikvahos, because the women's did not become tahor.
Okay.
So there's quite literally,
Literally,
blood is on that.
Okay, all right. Okay, behedya katani la, and specifically it then goes on to teach umetaknin et hadrachim ve'et rechovot ve'et hamikvaot. And here it says that we repair the streets and the roadways and the mikvahs, va'osin kol tzorchei rabim, and we do all of the things necessary for public welfare. La'atuye mai, to include what? Lav la'atuye chafira. Does this not then include digging? Shema mina, indeed,
Because the Mishnah
that's what
listed
we
it.
learned then.
So
Right.
you can't say that's the extra.
Okay, all right. We now go to a new piece from our Gemara, which is going to give us a new item. Okay. All right, and in this new item, we're going to come across a discussion in regards to tombstones. Okay, monuments. Metzainin et kivarot. We mark, I'm going to use that word, designate, but mark, I think, is really a better concept for us. Okay, the graves. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Paz. Remez l'tziyun kivarot min haTorah minay. A hint, suggestion, okay, to need to mark graves from the Torah. Where is it? Talmud Loma. What's the basis here? Right? Okay. A pasuk, Ura'ei etzem adam uvana etzlo tzion. Okay, so here's one example. Okay, you say regarding the bone, so to speak, of a person, ubana etzlo tzion, and there should be built on it.
Should be marked.
Right.
But
Okay.
this is talking,
About marking.
and this is also talking about Goyim.
Right. Okay, but in general, what do you say? Amar le Ravina le Ravashi. Okay, so now we see a more clarification. Ha mekame delite Yecheskel. If this pasuk came from Yecheskel, which it did, talking about, as you said, Gog and Magog, right? Right, and it talks about in general. Okay, what about before Yecheskel? All right, how do we know that? And that's what he's saying. Ha mekame delite Yecheskel. What here before Yecheskel came? Manamar, who said it? Ulatamech, and according to your reasoning. Hada Amar Rav Chisda. Here, what about what Rav Chisda said? Davar zemi Torat Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, that this came from the Torah, something that came from the Torah, something that came from the Torah of Moshe. Lo lamadnu midivrei Yecheskel ben Buzi lamadnu. That we did not learn from the words of a prophet, Yecheskel ben Buzi. In other words, how could you have, how do you have something that we've learned that's a halacha that we derive from the Torah, okay? And yet it would appear that you're saying that it only came from the time of Ezekiel, okay? How is that possible? Okay, call, right? All right, so what happens?
The issue is
Call ben nechar arail lev va'arail basar lo yavo el mikdashi l'shartein. Okay, where it says in this case, a pasuk, that anyone who is the son of a uncircumcised or the person uncircumcised himself shall not come to serve. All right, right, and it's referring to a Kohen. Okay. Mekame delite Yecheskel manama. Before Yecheskel came, who said it? Ela gamra gamirela. But rather, it was something we learned in our Masorah, in our tradition. Va'ata Yecheskel v'ismacha akra. But along came Yecheskel, and he attached it, so to speak, to a pasuk. Hachanami, here too, gamra gamirela. We've learned this as part of tradition. Va'ata Yecheskel va'asmacha akra. And along came Yecheskel, and he attached it to a pasuk. So it wasn't something that he, so to speak, initiated. It wasn't a new halacha derived from prophets. Instead, it was something else. Now, going on, Rabbi Abahu Amar Mehacha. So we come back then back to our question of what gives us the basis to say that a tombstone or a grave has to have a marker. Okay, we're now going to see other suggested answers. Okay, a number of them. Rabbi Abahu Amar Mehach. Rabbi Abahu says it comes from here, from a different pasuk, right? V'tamei tamei yikra, right? Using the word tamei twice, okay, regarding a person who has got tzara, right? Tuma koralo, he calls out that he has tuma. Va'omeret lo, and he says, therefore, parosh, separate from me, right? V'chein Rabbi Uziel bar Berei, the Rabbi Uziel Rabbah. And likewise, says Rabbi Uziel, the grandson, okay, of Rabbi Uziel the Great, right? Tuma koralo va'omeret lo frosh. He calls out tuma, that there's tuma, and therefore separate yourself. Vahai, and this lahachi hudat. Why does it come? I'm going to say this way. Hahu mebayele l'kedetanya. Don't we need it for what is taught normally there? Okay. V'tamei tamei yikra. That the Mitzorah is supposed to call out twice, tamei tamei. Right? Srich lahodiyat sa'aro l'rabbi. Namely, he has to announce his affliction. I'm going to use that word to the people. So that would be one use of tamei. And the second phrase, tamei, v'rabim mevakshim alav rachamim. And therefore, because of that, the majority people have to pray for Hashem's mercy on him to be healed.
What does this have to do with marking graves?
We'll get there in a moment.
Right now.
Question, I mean, I just looked up, something struck me. We're looking for a raya of marking graves.
Right?
Right, when Rachel died, it says, but Thomas Rachel, but Derech Efrasa, he based Lechem. Dayat saved Yaakov, not Seva, Ankur Rasa.
Why didn't they cite
Why did
that?
they cite that? Well, that's certainly an
Very
earlier
good
reference than
question.
anything else.
Well, that's a good question. Let's see if the Gemara addresses it.
That's
Well, I know that.
before Matan.
All right, but that could, right? Let's see if the Gemara, if it doesn't address it, your question is even more appropriate. Okay? Right? Okay. All right, so let's write, okay? So we have the double use of tameh, and it's giving us the normal drasha as to why there's double lashon. One for the Metzora to call out, to tell people to separate. One to tell people, pray for this person, okay, to be healed. All right? Im Kain, says the Gemara, lichtov v'tameh yikra. If that's the case, we didn't need a double lashon, okay? We didn't need two words. We just could have had one, v'tameh yikra. Let him call out, right, just once. Mai v'tameh tameh. Why the twice, two language words? Shamat mina tarte. We learn from this too. We learn from this both the example of what the Metzora has to call out, and the answer is we also learn theoretically that you have to put a mark on a grave. You have to mark graves.
Signaling Tuma to
Right.
keep people away becomes analogous to marking a grave to signal Tuma to keep people away.
Could be.
Robert, we only have this by Metzora, right? If someone becomes Tameh for another reason, they don't have to
No.
let everyone else know.
No, they don't have to yell at them, right? Okay, right, but the parallel Michael's suggesting is correct. The same way you are to separate yourself from somebody who's a Metzora, the idea is also should not come close to the grave, all right? Particularly if you're a Kohen. Okay? Abaye Amar Mehacha. Okay, the fact that the Gemara gives us multiple suggested answers tell us what? You'll see in a second. All right, Abaye says what? And from here, before somebody who's blind, don't put up an obstacle. Namely, if you don't know there's a grave there,
You're gonna walk on.
you're gonna you may accidentally walk on it. That's the problem, right? Rav Papa Amar. Rav Papa says the following: Va'amar solu panu derech. Rav Papa says no. It tells us move, go around. Okay, in other words, again, don't walk here. That's right. Rav Chinana Amar. He gives another one. Harimu michshol mi derech ami. So okay, all right. So again, Rabbi Yoshua Berei de Rav Idi Amar. Another one. Look at the number of different explanations, which tells us that therefore there isn't a
This one is just a continuation.
specific.
Not so-
right.
So this
So
has
what?
nothing to do with marking a grave. so
It does. In other words, they all suggest different psukim, okay, to give an example that there is something here that needs to be avoided.
It has nothing to do with the fact that you want to know who's buried there.
No, nothing to do with who's buried. Okay? Just that there is somebody buried there, and therefore it's a source of tumah, and you need to avoid it. Okay? But the fact that there are multiple explanations indicate there is no clear single original explanation. Okay?
No clarification of what the Metzora.
Okay, v'hoda'ata lahem et haderech asher yelchu ba. That's the follow, the rest of that passage. Mar Zutra amar, v'zartim et bnei Yisrael mitumatam. You should warn them from tumah, right? Okay. Rav Ashi amar, ushmartim et mishmarti. Right? Notice all the different, right? That you watch, you safeguard my safeguards, right? Rules. Asu mishmeret lemishmerti, that you make a safeguard to my guidelines, my rules. Ravina Amar, again, V'sham derech erenu b'yesha elokim. Right, another person. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, again, Kol Hashem or Chotav. Okay, again, another person. Zochev ro'eh b'shiuato shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, again, that one who is careful will therefore merit salvation. Shnei Amar v'sham derech. Okay, v'sham derech al tikra v'sham ela v'sham derech. Sham derech. I got them mixed up. All right, enu b'yesha Elohim. Okay, so again, all of these different explanations. Rabbi Yanai Havale Hahu Talmida. Okay, so now my question initially was, coming back to Alan's point, why didn't they cite that example? Well, Michael has a valid suggestion. Before it was before Matan Torah.
Pasuk goes on to say that the Matsefa is still here to this day.
Well, they also mourn
Right.
Yaakov 3 for a week. We don't learn any of the dinim before Matan Torah. Even Mila had to be given again.
Okay, so that would be one possible explanation. Okay, that has validity. Okay, there are probably a couple of others. Okay, what a whole different approach might say, what was their, what were the implication of marking a grave was to share a message that there is tumah here. Okay, and that doesn't apply.
Right, I think the answer actually is exactly that. That Yaakov put up the Matseva as to honor Rachel, and not to.
All of these other suggestions tell us avoid this area because of tumah. So that was the message that the Gemara, I'm suggesting, was trying to convey, and may not have chosen that. But it was a good question, Alan. Okay, so what happens? All right, so now we get another, since we're saying about avoiding and walking, watch where you're walking, etc., we continue now on the bottom of the Amud. Rav Yanai Havale Hahu Talmida. Rav Yana had a certain student. The Kol Yoma Hava Makshele. Every day gave him a hard time. Okay, B'Shabta the Rigla. Okay, the Shabta the Rigla Lo Hava Makshele. But on the Shabbos of a Yontif, in other words, okay, when there was a special drasha, okay, it could be Shabbos Agadol, it could be a Chol HaMoed drasha, whatever it was. On a Shabbos when more people would come, okay, on the regel to hear, he would not give him a problem. What? Kari Ale? And what did they say then about him? Okay, V'sham derech erenu b'yesha Elohim. Okay, so therefore they would say in that case, he was looking for the right path for salvation.
Yeah, it was because he
didn't want to embarrass his Rav.
in front of all these people.
Okay, all right, well, could be. Tanu Rabbanan. All right, so let's go on now. New Braita, right? Ein mitzaynim lo al kazayis min hametz, v'lo al etzem kisaora, v'lo al davar she'eno mitamei ba'ohel. Okay, all right, what are we saying here? One does not mark a, let's say, a grave site for the moment. Okay, not where there is only a kazayis, an olive amount of a deceased, not al atzem ksara, not if there's only a piece of bone the size of a barley corn, v'lo al davar she'eino mitamei ba'ohel, and not on something that doesn't convey tumah by means of a covering. You want to add to that?
Yeah,
right?
Taisvis points out that when the Brisa here is saying it's not necessary to mark a site where there's less death, mace material
less sign of a real,
create truma, so you don't have to mark it. So Taisvis is saying that if it's Chol Hamoed, you're not allowed to mark it. That would be a tircha.
okay, that's,
Yes, it's only a tiny little one-line post.
Right. okay, the Ein Mitzayni on the top of the Amud, right? Okay, Aval Mitzaynin al Hashidra, but we do clearly, okay, whether mark, and here, if you want to use that explanation, may have an obligation to mark, okay? But as I said, that's only if we accept Tosafot's view there. But we do mark where there is the backbone, Al Hagugolet, or on the skull, Al Rov Binyan, on the majority of the bones, right, the body structure, Al Rov Minyan Hameth, or even if the majority of bones of the deceased are there. Right? Furthermore,
Yes.
okay, the implication would seem to be if there's only a, little tiny piece.
That's a stira.
Okay. That's gonna, let's see what the Gemara tells us, right? Ve'ein mitzaynin al havadaut, aval mitzaynin al hasfeiko. And you don't have to mark where it's known clearly that there is a grave there. But you do have to mark if there is a question, if there is a grave there. Okay, in other words, if people know that that there's an area there that they normally bury people on the side of the road there. Okay, even though it may be fenced, it may not be fenced. Okay, we're going to see a question about that, I think, later in the Gemara. That's true. Okay, but if there's a yeah,
if there is a small body piece, it has to be buried, no?
yes, it has to be
And
buried.
there has to be a sign on it, no, some kind of a.
Depends on how, the implication of the Braita would be, depends on how small. If it's negligible, so to speak.
Because I'm thinking in a place like where, a battlefield, like this organization, Zaka, that goes around.
Right.
Collecting,
Right.
Those things have to be buried and a sign has to be put up that here is a.
Well, what they
They're
do,
bigger than an olive.
okay, what they do is, so long as it's a shiur that has to be done, they collect it and they deal with it.
And if you have, theoretically, if you have surgery and the
That's
body
another
part
issue.
is removed, you are supposed to ask the surgeon
To give it to
take
you
it
and
so it
and
can be buried.
okay. But notice, in other words, if there's a question, if there's a doubt, if you don't know for sure that this area by the side of the road, it has a grave site, then you clearly it must be marked.
No, that's smaller than a kazayas.
The tooth is usually small.
But if there's a number of these the pieces that are not of the size, so that accumulates.
They accumulate and then they're I have a nephew that was in the Tzanchanim, in the paratroopers, for his military duty, and then for his what do they call it? Reserve duty, Miluim, thank you. They actually assigned him to that particular branch of doing of going back and having either to remove the dead bodies, okay, or to remove wounded, or to remove body parts, okay, in that situation for his Miluim. Okay, now, what happens? The Gemara now wants to clarify for us this issue of under what circumstances do we say that something is questionable, whether a body is buried there? Okay, and now the Gemara is going to spell it out, right? Okay, sechachot, if there's overhanging boughs, upraot, I'm going to translate that as protrusions out of a wall, okay? Ubeit hapras, and a kind of field in which there may be body parts, bones, etc., that could have been plowed. Okay?
We'll see that.
And we're going to get to that in a second. Right? Okay. The Gemara, however, is not satisfied by just indicating those three examples. Right? Ve'ein ma'amidin tziyun b'makom tum'ah shelo, right? And we don't say that we mark, right,
Put an object.
something there, set up, let's say, a monument or a stone or whatever it is, okay? Shelo lahafsida tataharo, in order that we don't cause a situation where we prevent somebody from having ritually pure food.
No,
Okay?
if I may, we don't use a keli or an object and put it directly over the corpse, because you're taking.
Is that, you have
something
that
that's
from Art
tahar,
Scroll?
And well, that's the text. Read the words.
I just
Ein
did.
ma'amidin tziyun b'makom
Ein
tumah. Don't
ma'amidin
put it
tziyun.
directly above the tumah.
Right,
So lola have sidas and taharas.
right, so that
you
it
don't
doesn't,
make the tahar thing tameh.
okay, but neither Art Scroll nor,
Art Scroll says it the way I'm saying.
okay,
If I may, the note on the bottom says, if the marker was placed directly over the corpse, a person carrying truma might not realize that the area is tummy until he
okay,
suddenly
so
finds himself upon the marker.
okay, so in other words, it's the person that they're
But it's
concerned
the
about, not
food
the
that he's-
object,
No,
the
he's-
food that the
He's
person,
carrying food.
and the
suddenly he
food
realizes
might
he's right
become
on top of
tummy.
the tummy. So you have to
Right.
put a sign from it so that he won't enter.
In other words, the person has got food and they don't want the food to become tame, lest the person come too close to the tomb.
He won't realize
Okay.
until he's already on top of it. That's
Right. That's the implication, that it's going to affect the food. Okay? Ve'ein marchikin tziyun mimakom tum'ah. And we don't distance, okay, the marker, okay? All right, from that place of tumah. Shelo lahafsid Eretz Yisrael, in order not to reduce the land of Israel. In other words, to narrow the roadway might be an example. All right, to say then that if a body is buried on the side of the road. Okay. Ukazayas min hames eino mitame ba'ohel. So we ask then the question, and this olive amount of a deceased, okay, it does not convey tuma when it's when there's a covered item over it. Okay, could be a tent, right? Vahatanya, but aren't we taught? Elu shemitamin ba'ohel, kazayas min hames. All right, these are the things that do convey tuma when there is a overhang covering, like a olive amount of a deceased. Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa here, because Zayas mitzumtzam askin. We're dealing with a very small,
Exactly.
okay, in the sense that it's precisely that amount is what we're talking about. The sof michsar chaser, that ultimately it's going to diminish, okay? Right? Mutav yisrafu alav truma ukdoshim lafi sha'a va'al yisrafu alav la'olam. Okay, better, okay, that they burn, right? The truma and kodshim, all right, temporarily, all right, and not burn it always. All right, the Eluhain hasfekon. Now the Gemara comes back to that issue of what was the questionable items. Okay, sechachot We said one was, right, overhanging boughs, right? Paraot was protrusions. We suggested that was something sticking out of a wall. Okay, right? So what happens? Sechachot ilan, hamasach al haaretz. Right? By that we meant, right, overhanging branches of a tree that are over the land.
Like a weeping willow.
Okay, that would be an example. Praot, all right. Avanim pruot hayotzot min hagader. Okay, those are rocks sticking out of a rock wall, for example. Sometimes it could protrude, right? And something could be buried underneath that, right? Beit hapras keditznan. And when we say it's a field, it's taught in the following Mishnah. Hachoresha takever, harehu oseh beit hapras. One who plows a grave, okay, it results in what we call a beit hapras. And the Gemara tells us, v'kamahu oseh, and how much is it, right? Melo ma'aneh me'a ama. Okay, a complete furrow that is the extent of me'a amma, 100 ams. Ubeit hapras mimatame ba'ohel. And do we say that it's possible that this plowed field, which may contain body parts or bones, is going to convey tuma with something above it? Right? Va'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. What we said? Minafeach Adam Beit Hapras v'holech. That a person should be able to blow, okay, on the pieces of the surface, thank you, of the field, and then continue walking through it. The Rebbe Yehuda Bar Ami, Mishmei De'ula says as follows, Beit Hapras Shenidash Tahor, that if you have this field and it's trampled down, an area, maybe there's a pathway that has been trampled through it, that at least pathway would appear to be tahor.
Because the little bits of bones
Are
not
pushed
on the
down.
surface anymore.
Right?
Yeah, but why would the little bits of bones create enough volume to?
It is up.
The concept is that by plowing it up,
What
there are
could have been more bones there.
parts near each other.
If you're gonna
to be
blow it, it's gonna
considered
be dust.
together.
Well,
That's
other
what
words,
it's
if you
talking-
see it,
start-
you blow it out of your way. That's the point.
But then that's not enough volume if it can be blown out of the way.
Right? Okay, so let's come back in a second to your point, Bob. Right? Because it says the trampled field, okay, that is tahor. So if they're small bones, right, and they're pushed down below, let's say, surface level,
So they're smaller than,
okay, then they may have been further crushed
Right.
in that way because of the trampling. So they're certainly, as we said, if they're less than that shiur, they're not something that's going to convey tumor. Okay? What happens though, says the Gemara, Amar of Papa Lokash. This shouldn't be problematic for
then
us.
it's not a no, it's
Okay.
not considered
Right.
a so.
Kan b'steh she'avad bar kever. In one case, we're talking a place where we lost awareness, I'm going to use the word, of where the grave had been located in this field. Right? Kan b'steh she'necharash bar kever. And in another situation,
Right.
okay, we're talking about where the grave one was aware of, but it had been trampled. Whatever bones was left there had been trampled down. V'sadeh shenechrash ba'kever beit hapras karile, and the Gemara continues. But this field where it's been trampled, are we still going to call it a beit hapras? And yes, says the Gemara, v'hatnan. Why? Because aren't we taught elsewhere in a Mishnah Shlosha Beit Pras. There are three varieties of Beit Pras. One, Sadeh Shene'avad Bakeven. One may be a field where we are no longer aware. Okay, we lost the exact location where the grave was. Second, V'sadeh Shenecharash Bakeven, where in this case, all right, it had been trampled, it had been plowed over. And therefore, once it was plowed over, okay, it could be that whatever was there is so small now, it doesn't count. The third, Uste Bochin. It's a field of weepers. How do we explain a field of weepers? Okay, and Gemara asks that question. Umay ste bochin. What do we mean by that phrase? Rav Yoshua bar Abba mishmei de'ula amar. He tells us, sadeh shemaftirin ba metim. It's a field in which they leave the deceased. Okay, right? In other words, what happens is they bring the deceased body to that field and they leave it there in order to hand it over to whatever, to the, okay, where the deceased then may be taken for burial. Okay, so that's the implication. The family leave it there, they go, and then what we would call today the Chevra Kadisha, etc., would come and act at that point. Okay.
So why is that called?
Right, because people may cry.
No, the Gemara is going to say. So
right,
why
exactly.
V'tama
mai, what is it? Amar avimi mishum yeush ba'alim naguba. Right? Excuse me. Because of their despair.
That the rabbis designated that as a...
Right, they gave that name. Usteh shenecharash ba'kever lo ba'et ziyun, asks the Gemara, and a field in which a grave was plowed under, doesn't that not need some sort of marking? Vahatanya, but aren't we taught again in a Braita? Matzah sadeh mitsuyenet ve'ein yadua mativa. If they found a field which was marked and they don't know its variety, yesh ba ilanot, if it has trees, biyadua shenecharash ba kever. It's known then that a grave was plowed under. Ein ba ilanot, okay, if it doesn't have trees, biyadua she'avad ba kever. Then we know that it was a field and it was lost. They don't know where the grave is. It could very well have a grave, but they don't know the location. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, ad sheyehi sham zaken o talmid, unless there is an elder or a student, rabbinic student, scholar there, lafi she'ein hakol beki'in b'davar, because not everyone is so familiar, aware to, okay, what the law is in regarding that situation. Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, Kitanya Hahi, when this was taught, B'sadeh she'avad ba'kever. Okay, it was in regards to a field in which a grave site was lost, that Tzainuha, that they had marked. Yesh ba'ilanot, if there are trees, biyadua shenecharash ba'kever. It's known then that the grave was plowed under. Ein ba'ilanot, if there are no trees there, biyadua she'avad ba'kever. Therefore it's known that the grave site was lost. So the Gemara asks, V'lichush dilma ilanot migavai v'kavar mibarai. Is it possible to say that maybe the trees are on the inside and they buried on the outside? Kida amar ula ba'omdin al hagvulin. Okay, hachanami ba'omdin al hagvulin. Okay, as Ula says here that they were, okay, along the border of the area, okay, and here Also, it could be it was done on the border of the area, and that's where we'll stop here for today.
What is the rule again about summa in private versus public? If you encounter something in a private domain versus a public.
Okay, in the public domain, if I remember correctly, in a private domain, you have to assume that it's yes, Tome. Okay, if it's a
Public
suffix
domain,
in a public domain, no, you don't.
right. So here, in a case where there would be, I mean, is this a reshus a yochid? I mean, that we're talking
Well,
about?
that's, the issue is, I'm thinking that we're talking at a time where they did not necessarily put up fences.
Right.
All right, so they had to simply mark, and it's possible that somebody could have been buried along the road.
So it'd be like a Carmelit, so wouldn't that?
So in that case, if it's near the road, it's very possible that they could have felt that there would be similar to a public domain, and therefore.
Going my way?
What?
You going my way?
I'm hopeful that my car is.
Okay.
Where do you put the mark? So the Gemara is wrapped, or if it's not. Only
Yeah, I
if
guess
there's
putting it
enough
back
of
there
a
would not,
person That's the grand.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it back on top of it.
And you can't walk over.
Safe until they get- until they
Well,
empty
you
it
still
out.
have to be tried. Well, everybody is coming ace today, but that's not the point. The point is you're supposed to avoid two. So you're not